All right, so we're good to go. So, hello everyone. My name is Brendan Jenkins, and I'm a senior cloud and AI solution engineer at Microsoft. I'll talk a bit more about what that is and what that role entails as we go throughout the presentation today. But long story short, I specialize in application development and AI solutions at Microsoft. And I'm going to talk a bit more about how my role plays into practical solutions when we talk about the real world. So in terms of an agenda, clicker here is not working. I'm going to talk about myself and a little bit about my career journey because I feel like it's a very common question. I graduated as an EE and I somehow ended up in the AI space. So I'm sure a lot of you are kind of curious about that. Then I want to talk a little bit about cloud and how cloud plays into a lot of AI solutions in the present day. And then I'll talk about how my role plays into that. And then lastly, we can just kind of do a Q&A and wrap up. And I definitely want to make sure I add you all on LinkedIn and talk a little bit about referrals and whatnot. But with that said, let's go ahead and get started and talk about my journey here. So I graduated George Mason back in May of 2021. It felt like forever ago, but when I say it out loud, it doesn't seem like it's that far away. But with that, after I graduated George Mason, I actually did a couple of roles across engineering. So I was at Micron for a little bit where I did some process engineering. So that's local in the Manassas area. And then I also worked at a firm called Burns & McDonnell where I was doing some electrical engineering work. But there was a point in my career where I was just like, you know what, I think that cloud and AI is the future and I want to kind of switch gears. So long story short, I was able to apply to a couple of different roles and I ended up landing a role at AWS as a solutions architect. And I'll talk a little bit more about what that is in a second. But over the 3 years, almost 4 years I was there, I was able to work my way up to a lead solutions architect role. I actually ended up really enjoying it a lot. But in short, what a solution architect does is they pretty much help build architectures and advise customers who are leveraging things like the AWS cloud to essentially build solutions. And I actually had a focus while I was at AWS in AI, and I'll talk about how I got there as well. But after my time at AWS, I ended up transitioning over into Microsoft, which was about mid of last year. And I was able to become a senior AI solution engineer, where I focus on primarily helping customers with, again, application development and building AI applications within the Azure cloud. So most of my career has been spent in relation to cloud technologies. But again, I also have a little bit of that engineering background throughout internships, along with a couple of stints when I first graduated. So any questions about that before I move forward? Make sense? All right. I'm going to talk a little bit more about my role here in a little bit, but I wanted to kind of just start the conversation because I like to keep things conversational. I don't like to just present and give a million slides. I wanted to just ask you all, do you all know what the cloud is and what that entails? You can just raise your hand and I can call you on you if that works. I know we have some freshmen here, so I don't expect the right answers. So you could also guess if you want to. But any takers? Yeah, go ahead. No wrong answers. Mm-hmm. So yeah, no, that's a good answer. Anybody else want to take a shot at what the cloud is? Any go ahead, yeah.
Like, are we taking a shot at like what in general what Azure is? Or?
Well, just like the cloud. I'm going to talk about Azure specifically, but just the cloud in general.
Yeah, I'm familiar with Azure, and I understand like Microsoft does a lot with Copilot and stuff nowadays. Like whenever I'm using 365, Copilot is huge. I know Azure is introduced, like you guys have this like new example of AI right?
Yeah.
I was also launched, so I'm a little familiar with it, but I don't know how to.
Okay. Yeah. So basically, what the cloud is just think of it as the on-demand availability of IT resources that companies essentially rent from cloud providers, right? So think of servers that would typically run your favorite applications. I know everyone probably here uses some form of social media. LinkedIn, Instagram, a lot of these platforms run on the cloud, which are pretty much just servers that are hosted by companies like Microsoft, where companies come and rent them from us, and they're able to essentially run their cloud infrastructure at scale. So think of it as just IT resources at scale that a lot of companies come to us to use. Now, an important piece of that is that within cloud resources, we have AI services, right? And we're not going to talk about all these services you see on the screen here, but there are some important AI services that our customers leverage to be able to build real AI solutions, right? I think in the industry right now, a lot of customers that I work with that come to Microsoft for things like cloud services are doing things like building automated agentic workflows. I mean, I don't know if you all are learning anything about AI in your classes, but long story short, a lot of companies are very focused on AI, productivity increases along with kind of automating various workflows as a part of their business. And the way that companies are doing that nowadays is by building on various platforms like Microsoft Foundry to build and host their agents and have multi-agent essentially architectures that are able to support those workflows, right? So with that said, now that you have a little bit of understanding of what the cloud is, hopefully, and then also how there are AI services within that, I'm going to talk a little bit about what I do in relation to that, right? So like I said, when it comes to cloud services, companies come to Azure or to something like the AWS cloud, and they'll essentially rent infrastructure from us to host their applications at scale, like I said, right? So what I do is if a company like Electronic Arts, is anybody familiar with that gaming company? Like they make Madden and NBA 2K, all that stuff, right? So like those type of games are hosted on the cloud. So like they'll come to someone like myself, and especially my previous role at AWS, I focus a little bit more on AI now, and they'll say like, hey, we want to spin up a brand new game, Madden NFL 27. We want to make sure that we have the capacity to be able to support the scale and demand that we anticipate on opening day, right? Because when you think about it, if any of you play games in here, usually on day one, a lot of the servers crash, right? And what's the reason for that? It's because they usually don't have the actual amount of resources that they need to scale for demand on those opening day games, right? So what I do essentially is I help make sure that companies are able to architect and be ready for various things like that. But in my current role, I focus more on AI, right? So when I have the first bullet point up here in terms of being able to design AI architectures, what that means is I'm helping customers use our different Azure services to essentially build out AI specific workflows along with agentic workflows. And I'm going to give you an example of that here in a second. Also, another part of my job is to help customers that are coming to us to talk about Azure, help them choose when to not use AI. Because a lot of customers think that everything is an AI use case, and a lot of times it can just be automated with a simple function that you deploy in the cloud, right? So that's another part of my job. And then, like I mentioned before, building agent workflows is probably the hot topic that a lot of companies are coming to cloud providers nowadays for, especially to have that scale and to be able to automate those workflows, to implement retrieval augmented generation systems, right? So if you ever think about AI and how you're able to ground models and chatbots in your specific company's data or in your personal data, retrieval augmented workflows are going to be how you're going to be able to do that. I also talk about integrations in terms of being able to integrate with their current applications. And again, I'm going to give you all an example of that so you have a real world practical example. And then lastly, I have to make sure that everything is balanced in terms of accuracy, cost, security, and governance, right? So with that said, are there any questions before I move on to like a real world example of what that might look like? So go ahead.
Kind of related. I don't know what RAG is. What are RAG systems?
So I'll try to give you an example of something that you might use on a day-to-day basis. Does anybody here use like ChatGPT or Claude? I'm assuming people use something like that. So let's say that you wanted to ask ChatGPT about something that's not a part of its knowledge base. So obviously, everyone knows that the base ChatGPT models, the base Claude models, are trained on a corpus of data that is just basically from the internet. But let's say you wanted to ask ChatGPT about, I don't know, hey, for my study guide, like what is the, I don't know, just some specific question about something that you have on your study guide that you wrote or something like that on your computer. What you can do is you can actually set up a retrieval augmented generation workflow to essentially ground the model and that data that might not be a part of the internet. So let's say you had some notes on your computer on a Word doc, and you wanted the model to be able to pull from that when you're studying or something to maybe give you some test quiz answers or something like that. What you could do is you could build that retrieval augmented generation workflow and build that in with the model. So then it'll have knowledge of that information that is not out there on the internet, if that makes sense, right? So what a lot of companies use that for in the real world is if they're trying to come to us and say, hey, we're trying to build a HR chatbot because we want to be able to have streamline the process of people asking questions about like their PTO policy or time off or whatever. What we can do is we could help them build a retrieval augmented generation workflow to essentially train the model or ground the model, I should say, in their internal policies and documents, basically. So that's just a real world example of something I recently helped a company with. That's a good question, though. Anybody else have any other questions?
Can not companies but regular people use these RAG systems?
Wait, sorry, what was that?
Can ordinary people use RAG systems?
Yes, yeah. So the beautiful thing about this industry is that things are moving very quickly, and they made the process of doing things like implementing RAG systems a lot easier. They might not say it's or call it RAG on the surface because most users are very abstracted away from that. But if you use something like Copilot, I don't know if anyone uses Copilot on their Microsoft computer. You have an ability to go to something called Agent Builder and build your own kind of agents. And with that, you're able to essentially upload your documents and have like a chatbot trained on your specific data. So if you have like documents like study guides or something like that you want the chatbot to be knowledgeable, joined Microsoft because he was at Microsoft and he was basically trying to recruit me a little bit. So I would say like the people that you meet at these type of events, you'll never know when you come across them again in the future, right? And you'll never know. I might be at Google in the future and I might come across one of you all at a conference, and maybe I'm one of those people who have a manager that has a spot open on their team, right? That's the importance of networking. So I always make sure that you connect with these people, you remember their faces, they remember your face, and yeah, I mean that's what I've always done throughout my career. I don't know, that's that's the best I could do. But yeah, go ahead. Yep.
I guess it's kind of related, kind of a side question, but like, what do you do if you're like bad with faces and names? Like, any tips or just like get better at it with exposure?
Yeah, for networking, you gotta have to be good with faces and names. I mean, unless that person's just really good at remembering you, then that's one thing. But typically, if you're somebody who's looking for opportunities, you definitely want to be at least somewhat good with that. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I didn't have that issue, so honestly, I don't have any good tips for you. But yeah, go ahead.
I guess I don't really know a lot about Azure, but if you build like a backend like RAG system, is Azure can that handle like the front end part?
So no, but Azure does have the tools to give you. It gives you tools to be able to build a front end. So like if you want to host your front end, because maybe you build some front end in like React or Angular or something like that, we have like cloud services that can actually host that front end, and then we make the integrations with from that front end to the back end RAG systems a lot easier by integrating through APIs and stuff like that. Again, very much of an oversimplification, but long story short, there's a lot of services that can kind of piece together like Legos essentially to help kind of bridge that gap between like front end, back end, and any middleware that might be in there as well. So, yeah, go ahead.
I have a question about education.
Yeah.
Which classes do you recommend to take for current students at Jenkins University to get a job in the future?
Yeah. Well, I know we have varying majors here, so like, again, I was an electrical engineering major. Like, if you have a willingness to learn, I'm always one of those people who think that like, regardless of the classes that you take in college, like, there's always certifications out there. There's always other ways that you can kind of get continuous growth and knowledge. But definitely, I would say emphasize your CS classes. I think that a lot of roles, even mechanical engineers nowadays do a lot of like software type of stuff like coding. So like I would definitely say CS classes, prioritize those. You don't have to obviously memorize everything that you learn in your classes, but just making sure that you have the ability to learn quickly, you pick up new languages quickly, right? Everything is just pretty much the same, but just syntax changes across different languages and stuff like that. As long as you're like a quick learner, you can pick up on those things. I would say you're pretty much good to go. Honestly, a lot of the knowledge I got was actually through my real world practical experience. Like a lot of companies are, very patient with new grads. They'll make sure that you get the knowledge that you need. And a lot of the stuff you'll learn in terms of real world application is going to be on the job anyway. So as long as you're just picking up on, like I said, a lot of the basics like syntax, at least a couple of languages, and then being able to pick up new languages very quickly, most people will be, good to go when joining new companies or going for new opportunities. So.
What's about certifications? So, I saw like some certifications from Amazon, from Microsoft, from Google. So, what do you think are like the best options now? What is the best option?
So I'll give you my complete unbiased opinion. I do recommend everybody like learn some form of cloud because I'll tell you, a majority, I'm not giving names, but a majority of the companies that everybody here wants to work for uses some form of cloud, like for software development. So most developers have to know, you don't have to know it before you go there, but like when you're in the job, you'll eventually have to learn it anyways. So if you want to kind of get a jump start, I highly recommend looking at cloud certifications. Now, in terms of the different cloud providers, like you said, AWS, Azure, Google, AWS does have the largest market share, meaning that most companies are, I would say majority of companies are using AWS, but then in second place comes Azure, and then next comes like Oracle, Google. So if you want to make sure that you're kind of hitting most of the market share, I would probably recommend a certain AWS. Again, unbiased opinion. I'm at Microsoft right now, so I'd probably recommend an AWS certification. I also think their certifications are a little bit better than Azure's, to be honest with you. So I would probably recommend like doing like a cloud practitioner certification with the AWS cloud. It gives you a lot of the basics, probably like I'd say 100 level, and that'll probably get you enough knowledge for you to at least be familiar at a high level with how cloud services work and all that good stuff. So. Mm-hmm.
You really want to learn cloud. Okay.
These are really good points that he's bringing up, though. Like,
I'm not trying to be mean to anybody.
No,
I'm just trying to make sure that I want to make it just so that we're on track.
yeah. No, 100%, 100%. Yeah, I mean, I don't have any more slides, but I do have something I did want to share. One more thing I did want to share on here. But I will say that is very true. Like, the certification, like, well, almost, like I said, almost every company is using cloud now, like large companies. So eventually you are going to have to learn it. Eventually you are going to have to get, like, eventually know something about cloud. So I would recommend, again, doing those certs. It'll get you some hands-on, a little bit of hands-on, a little bit of practicality, like he was mentioning. But yeah, definitely make sure you prioritize that at some point if you do have extra cycles or extra time while you're at Mason. I'm surprised I don't have more classes around that. But yeah, I definitely think they should definitely have some more classes around that, to be honest with you. But one last thing I wanted to mention before I kind of opened up for Q&A was just like the networking side of things. So if you all can, make sure that you add me on LinkedIn really quick. I want to make sure I connect back with all of you. And then I do want to offer everyone here a chance at a referral to different careers that we have at Microsoft. I do have some connections with the early career team at Microsoft. So if you can just visit our careers page and you connect with me on LinkedIn, always feel free to reach out to me through my DMs on LinkedIn and just say like, hey, I found a role that looks like a good fit for me. Do you mind referring me to it? And I'm happy to do so. So please just make sure that you add me on LinkedIn, and then you also visit our career page to see if you could find any careers that are kind of good fit for you all. I do recommend most people start off generally, just do like some form of like a new grad software engineering role or something like that. And again, there's always going to be possibilities for you all to kind of focus in the future. But also one last thing I want to emphasize is that there are not only software engineering roles available. I highly encourage you all to look into cloud careers, roles like I was doing that I was talking about before. There are a lot of headcount openings opening up, especially around cloud careers right now. So it's the future, like we've been discussing. AI is the future. Obviously, we're still going to need developers to build a lot of these services, but a lot of these services need to be consumed by companies, right? So that's what a lot of people like myself are helping customers do, is adopt these services and essentially build with them. So make sure you're not only looking for software development careers, you're also looking for other things like cloud careers on there. Your cloud solution architect, your solution engineer, et cetera, because those are also really good career paths for CS majors and computer engineering, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, that was the last thing I wanted to close off with. So but I guess I can open up the floor again for any last Q&A that anyone wanted to have, since I think we have like 5-ish minutes left or so. So, and I was really quick, sorry.
I was gonna ask, what was the transition like when you had to go from AWS to Azure? Like, if you already got your AWS certification, was it pretty easy? Like, the skills were transferable to the
Yeah, that's a good question. So that's the beautiful thing about learning at least one cloud platform. Like I was really good in AWS. Everything was pretty much the same in Azure. It was just different service names. So there's like hundreds and hundreds of services across Azure and AWS. But if you can get familiar with like one cloud and get familiar with how the services work and really the underlying technology behind it, then like going to a new cloud isn't that bad. It's just like learning a new software engineering language. It's just different syntax, basically, right?
Gotcha.
So yeah, I would say definitely once you learn one, the transition to others will be a lot easier. So that's a good question. Yeah.
I have a question. What do you think? Which AI careers or jobs will be replaced or eliminated in the near future?
I'll say again, the perspective from, I know what you mean. The perspective of a lot of companies isn't that we're trying to eliminate jobs per se. They're trying to rephrase it as like we're we're trying to just become more efficient with less. I mean, that to me it sounds like the same thing, but nonetheless, like I would say most roles that they're looking at more have to do with like customer service. So like I think everyone has had an experience where they have to talk to a chatbot for getting some sort of support on something that they are having issues with. A lot of what they're trying to automate with agentic AI is roles like that. I personally don't think, based on like my knowledge and working internally, et cetera, that we're coming close to like automating like software engineers. I don't think that's anywhere near what we're close to getting to. But again, I do think it's important for our software engineers to know how to use these tools in their day to day, because again, you can do a lot more with a lot less. And that's like the perspective of a lot of these companies right now. So.
Are you able to speak on like how you use AI in your day-to-day?
Yeah. So since I focus again in AI and application development, I also do help customers like a little bit with the coding side of things. So like I personally use GitHub Copilot a lot for like building infrastructure as code, or even just helping customers like give them sample, because a lot of the stuff like agentic solutions or generative AI solutions usually have to be written as code. A lot of them don't have to be, but like for the advanced solutions, they typically have to be written as code. So a lot of times I'm kind of helping them with that, but usually I am using, my GitHub Copilot to help me out with the coding side of things. And I'm using my Copilot, which is just on my computer, for like this your typical like, hey, can you help me summarize this email, or hey, can you help me write this email to this customer, or something like that. So I am using a lot of AI in my day to day, and I will say most companies now are emphasizing that their employees are using some form of AI in some way, shape, or form. So it's a good question. Yeah, go ahead.
What do you love most about working at Microsoft compared to the other companies?
Microsoft versus AWS. So one thing I'll say I loved about AWS is that I learned a ton very quick. I will say like AWS is super cutthroat. So like if I were to take a positive away from that, I was able to advance my career very quickly there, because it's like kind of like one of those sink or swim things where if you're very successful there, you'll probably move up quickly and you'll probably do very well, or you sink, right? So that's one thing I did like about AWS. I was one of those people who kind of like learned quickly and be able to kind of move up the ranks pretty quickly there. So that's the positive of AWS. I think Microsoft has a much better culture in terms of not being as much sink or swim or cutthroat, if you want to put it that way. Again, I didn't have any issues with like the syncing aspect, but like Microsoft, I think, has a much better kind of community feel, kind of culture, company culture. I'm still learning fast there, but again, a lot of the stuff that I had from my previous job is very transferable to Microsoft, so I didn't have to really learn a ton. So like, I will say like the pace is a little bit different. So things move a little bit slower at Microsoft as compared to AWS. So yeah, good.
That's cool. So I'm assuming you work maybe at the rest of the office or the Arlington office?
So I'm remote, but I am eventually trying to make my way into the Arlington office just to check it out. I have access to that both the offices, but if I did go in, it'd probably be in the Arlington one, because I live in Arlington. So, yeah. Good question. Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
When you joined Microsoft, what skills do you think that you had that you got improved?
Wait, sorry, I couldn't hear you toward the end there.
When you joined Microsoft,
Uh-huh.
what skills do you think you had that you got improved?
What skills do I think I had that got me what?
That you
Recruited. Well, yeah, actually, technically, Microsoft did reach out to me for the role that I ended up joining. On my LinkedIn, and actually, this is a very good kind of thing. I'm glad you mentioned this. On my LinkedIn, if you eventually have some time to just check out my LinkedIn, you'll notice that I have a lot of thought leadership, and what that means is I do a lot. I write a lot of technical blog posts to get my name out there and to talk about solutions, talk about like various topics around AI. So as a part of that, Microsoft reached out because they noticed a lot of my work that I do in the industry, and they were basically able to say like, hey, we noticed that you do a lot of work around AI. We wanted to kind of interview you for this AI role that we have at Microsoft. So I will say that's very important. So like eventually when you are in role at whatever companies you all end up joining, make sure that you're very, I don't want to say, just make sure that you showcase everything that you're working on as much as you can when you're working at your companies. That's why I'll put it. And a lot of that will kind of grab the attention from recruiters on LinkedIn and stuff like that. So just check out my LinkedIn. Eventually you all will see what I'm talking about with all like the blog posts and all that stuff that I've worked on. So, and then I think did you want to ask your question real quick? They're all good. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Any last questions that anybody has, or? I think we're right at like 5:02. I don't know if we have to get out of the room or something, but I'm so happy to stay and still answer questions. So.
I just have one last one.
Yeah, go ahead.
I did see on your LinkedIn. This is back when you went to school here.
Mhm.
You were on part of like the solar car.
Oh yeah,
team.
Hypernova Solar. Yeah.
Yeah, and I wanted to just ask you like what that experience like, because I don't think they still have that
Yeah, they
here
don't,
at
yeah.
They
Mason.
don't have that anymore.
Yeah. But was anybody around when they had that by chance? I'm just curious. You were?
I didn't see a solar car, but I've definitely seen it in the mix. So they used to be in box.
Yeah, I used to be there.
They
Yeah.
had like this little car thing. It's like they made
Yeah.
an engine out of nothing.
Yeah. No,
that
that.
kind of group seems like they probably did that.
Yeah. So yeah, that was it may have been the same group. Yeah, I was a part of that club during undergrad. It was pretty cool. We got like funding from different local companies, like different defense contractors to help us like fund a lot of it. By the time I graduated, we weren't fully finished with it yet. I don't know. I kind of was out of the loop by the time I graduated, to be honest with you. But it was a pretty cool experience because there was a lot of different aspects of being in that club and having a real practical experience with like the software side, the electrical engineering side of things, and all that stuff. So I got to work on a little bit of all of it. So it was a pretty cool experience in that sense of being able to actually work on like a real project. And it actually made getting jobs at like AWS a lot easier because that was one of the projects I talked about when I was first interviewing with AWS, and they thought it was like super cool. So
Yeah, it is really cool.
Is that when you started your whole blog post career? It's just like
well, no, AWS, like I said, AWS is like a very interesting place where like you kind of take charge of your career and like they give you the flexibility to really do whatever. So like blog posts aren't a requirement, but like it's something I wanted to do while I was at AWS just to kind of, again, build my brand. Because I think an important thing, like once you all graduate and you're out of college, and you should really be doing this now too, is building your brand on LinkedIn, kind of showcasing the work that you've done. I think I have a blog on my senior design project that I did at Mason as well. So like if you have something that you've worked on that you can publicly show, whether it be projects, it could be your own personal website. Like you'll see a lot of people who are trying to get into these top companies have their like crazy personal websites and all that stuff. Like that's all about building your brand. And I highly recommend that everybody does that because again, it just makes you getting other opportunities a lot easier in the future. So yeah. You're good.
Maybe, how was it like interviewing for like AWS like Microsoft?
I mean, it's as intense as everyone says. Like, it's not. I personally, I'm one of those people who believe if you like prepare enough, like you'll be good. Most interviews are a lot chiller than you think. Now that I've been on the other side of the table and I've done so many interviews, both at Microsoft and AWS for actual candidates, it's really not as nerve-wracking as people should make it out to be. It's easy to say that as I'm sitting on the other side of the table now. But honestly, a lot of the things I look for because I also interview software engineering candidates at AWS and Microsoft, and I just look for the thought process of how people go about solving problems. I don't focus as much on like, hey, did you get the right answer? It's more so like, can you describe me what you would do if you can't get to the answer right now? Like, how are you thinking about it? How would you get to that solution? Because at the end of the day, like most new grads, we're not expecting them to know everything. So it's like most people are just memorizing leak code problems at this point. And it's like I focus more on like what your thought process is and like how you go about solving problems rather than how well you can memorize a leak code problem that you solved last week. You know what I mean? So.
Do you ask lead code?
So was that?
Do you ask lead code problems on the interview?
I personally don't. I don't. I like to keep things a little bit more open-ended. I ask technical questions I like to ask more about what they've worked on, and I like to drill into what they've worked on, like projects they worked on, and ask technical questions about that. So.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good.
How did you find like what you were good at? Because your career seemed very much very much forward. Like you kind of started with what you initially started with the architect, and you kind of did. Then you got a lead architect.
Mm.
So how did you figure out in the first place that lead architect was your kind of thing? Just like did you do internships? Did you like go to career fairs? How did you find out that was like your success? Because you mentioned you were very successful and people noticed that.
So I mean, like AWS. That's why I kind of liked working at AWS. It's an interesting place for sure. I mean, when I first started, like everyone starts at the same point. This is how I look at it. Everyone starts at the same point when you join a company, and it's a matter of like what you end up doing once you're actually there, right? So like, again, like things like writing those technical blogs, those are not required. Those are optional. So like doing things like going above and beyond, et cetera, and being a leader in terms of like taking on like additional responsibility is kind of how I was able to eventually move into something like a lead role at AWS. But like not everyone takes those opportunities. So it's just a matter of like the type of person you are, if you want to go the extra mile or not. AWS is one of those places that reward a lot of people that do those type of things. So and it varies by company, obviously. Like, but yeah, that's one of those places that do reward that.
To follow up on that, you mentioned a blog post. Was there any other stuff that you did to build that? What other responsibilities did you take on?
Oh yeah, I could probably talk about this for a long time, but I would say probably like one of my coolest accomplishments is so like AWS has its own AI developer tool. I don't know if anyone has ever heard of it. It's now called Kiro, but it used to be called like Code Whisperer and Amazon Q Developer. Has anyone heard of any of those by chance? You have Amazon Q? Like that service, like I helped not only with the launch of that service, but I also helped with getting customers to adopt that service. So I actually started an internal program to help customers actually adopt it by going to like a lot of like developer conferences and actually presenting about it and getting customers to use it. So like I would say probably one of my biggest accomplishments was probably getting, I think we accounted for like 20% of all users on Amazon Q Developer just through our program that I started at AWS. So so yeah, that was probably like one of my biggest things. And again, doing those type of things get you into lead roles.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a very like simplified answer for that, but yeah, it was a long process to get there. No, those are great questions. Great questions. Any last ones? Any last takers?
Is there any free certification for students?
What was that?
Is there any like free certification for students?
Free. I think that I don't know about at Azure, but I know at AWS when I was there, they did run like I think they did run like programs to get people certified. Like I think we had a program to help cover the cost of some students' certifications. I don't know if that still exists or not. I'm not there anymore, but always be on the lookout for those type of things. Like usually if you go to like the certification websites, usually they'll have like student specials and stuff like that to get certified for free. So like if we're talking cloud certifications, I'd look there. There are obviously a lot of other types of certifications, but I can only really speak to the cloud ones, to be honest with you. So I'll definitely just be on the lookout for like those type of like student specials on the different certification websites, whether you're looking at Azure or AWS or GCP. So
I think we are over time, so sorry for keeping you so
no,
late.
it's okay.
Can we give a round of applause to Ben, please?
Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much for coming by. We really appreciate it.
Of course. And make